Hi, I'm Sandy.
And I'm Paul, and we're aboard Sea Oasis. We always enjoyed outdoor activities and exploring, so now we're spending time exploring in the San Juan Islands, as well as Canada, and eventually Alaska.
So welcome aboard.
We've had a lot of rain, so there's a lot of fog out here. And what we're having to do is run with radar. And this is how that works. The pink line is the line we're following, and these orange marks are boats out there. And as long as you're watching right in front of your boat, now it's clearing up ahead of us, which is good, but there's more to come. As long as you're watching for logs and things right in front of your boat, and you're watching the radar and going slow, you should be okay. Paul is teaching me to trust the instruments, and the map also marks all the buoys out there with directionals telling us if there's rock or warnings. See the boat out there coming out of the fog? I don't even know if you can see it, but that's what we're dealing with. But that boat is right here, so we know he's there.
As you will soon see, Matia is a beautiful island with rock cliffs, stunning views, lots of wildlife, a spring-fed lake, and a very quiet island compared to some that surround it. In this video, we will explore not only the island, but a true story full of promise, dreams, and hope that unfortunately ends in tragedy. So let's begin with the island itself. The distance between Friday Harbor to Matia is 17 nautical miles, which equates to approximately 20 miles. Matia encompasses 145 acres of forest and wildflowers in May, with a view of Mount Constitution on Orcas Island to the south, Susha Island to the west, and Lumi Island to the east. We decided to drop anchor in deeper waters just inside the entrance of the cove. Rolfe Cove is located on the northwestern side of Matia, where it and 5 acres are dedicated as state park. The rest of Matia is part of the San Juan National Wildlife Refuge. The state has provided a dock, but the water levels at low tide get pretty low, and we wanted to explore without concern. We used our dinghy to approach the island.
So we come off the bridge here in Matia or Matia, and we have a choice of this trail, that trail back in the trees, or the one Paul is crossing in front of. I think we'll take the one in the trees. Okay, so tropical again. I'm amazed at that. And they have restrooms on the island if you need them, compost toilets, I'm sure, and picnic tables, and a beautiful trail to follow. What beauty we see here. Every day we get out, I fall more in love with Washington State. I want to show you guys this tree. It goes on and on and on and on. So it'd take, you think 3 more people? 4?
Or at least 4.
At least 4 people
Mm-hmm.
to lock hands. Moss turns out to be a good sap remover off your hands. I've got it all over my fingers from that tree.
As soon as you leave the dock, you see the beauty you will enjoy as you follow the trail around the island. Lush forest, natural fern growing along a clear-cut trail leads you past very old trees and sunlight-dappled ground cover that is largely untouched and seems too pretty to be real. I thought to myself, God planned and planted everything perfectly here for our enjoyment. We were delighted to experience some of the wildlife up close in pretty short order as we circled the island in our dinghy. We first came upon a community of seals who call Matia home. They were hidden behind a large rock, unseen until you had almost passed their hidden haven. And we spotted some crab. One of which could have made our dinner. But we are 2 days early for legal crabbing. We are anxiously looking forward to lowering our crab pot as soon as we can. Paul sits here as though he has an island to himself. But that's not the story I want to tell. Everything we are seeing and experiencing here is exactly the same that piqued Mr. Elvin Hayworth Smith's interest in this island. Mr. Smith, originally from Wisconsin, was a Civil War veteran and captain in the Union Army, a former newspaperman and employee of the North Pacific Railroad. He was quoted as saying,
I gave up the railroad business in 1890 and came to Fairhaven.
Fairhaven is now known as Bellingham. Elvin Smith was unhappy, angry, and bitter because the Army never recognized his battlefield commission, and he had been disappointed by a love affair gone wrong. Rumor had it that Matia was going to be opened to homesteaders. Mr. Smith partnered with a lawyer to buy out a couple who had acquired squatters' rights to Matia. He wanted homesteaders' rights. His original intention was to complete their claim by moving onto the island and later sell their rights where both would profit. It was less than 2 years later, in April of 1892, that Smith's intentions drastically changed. He decided to buy the lawyer out of the partnership and spend the rest of his life on Matia. He loved his solitary island with its sandy beaches and fish-filled coves. He also found Matia's land to be filled with rich soil where he raised fruits and vegetables. He was quoted as saying,
I'm surrounded on all sides by mountains, and on the north, east, and the south by a snow-capped mountain year-round. Scenery's grand every clear day. On stormy or windy days, the sea is equally grand and terrible. It's a constant lovely dream.
He built a cabin and brought chickens, rabbits, and sheep and raised them for himself and to sell. He was known to stretch a net across this long, narrow bay near his cabin to catch cod and salmon. He became known as the Hermit of Matia Island. Upon further research, I found that on Saturdays he often rode 2.5 miles to visit nearby Orcas Island, where he would buy supplies. He was known to frequently bring friends to visit on Matia and sometimes stay a period of months as guests in his home. I was puzzled. To me, this did not sound like the characteristics of a hermit. I later found that he was dubbed with the name as a result of spending hours praying on behalf of numerous strangers who had written seeking relief for their illnesses. Smith referred to this as
therapeutic suggestion through the use of God's laws.
In 1905, Smith wrote,
I expect company all next month. I got to cure a man from drunkenness through therapeutic suggestion. I've never seen him, but know his wife and mother-in-law well, and they're sending him to me from Seattle. I cured the mother of indigestion and constipation of many years standing, and they have faith in me.
Smith eventually overcame what he described as years of suffering from anger.
I found it was growing worse on me, so I just reformed, and I'm so delighted with it that I'm a real crank on the subject. And I never expect to be angry again. It's injurious to health, and one loses many friends through anger.
Smith, now in his 80s, was stranded alone for weeks when a storm had destroyed his boat, his only means of transportation. His friends and an Orcas resident named George Carrier, who was also a Civil War veteran, convinced Elvin Smith he shouldn't be living out on that island alone. Mr. Carrier went out to stay with Smith. Realizing his years and need for help, Mr. Smith began mentioning moving to Orcas Island and giving up Matia. However, Mr. Smith never had to make that decision. On February 23, 1921, Smith and Carrier set off for Orcas to buy supplies. On their trip back to Matia with a full load of their supplies, the small outboard-powered rowboat disappeared. Neither man's body was ever found. Days later, some of their supplies washed up on shore, giving confirmation of their fate. Gravestones for Elvin Smith and George Carrier were erected in Mount Baker Cemetery on Orcas over empty graves. As we walked along the trails, my mind was reviewing what I now knew of Elvin Smith's history here. Elvin Smith had quickly recognized Matia Island as a perfect setting for his life. After spending time searching for sea glass and shells on the beach, we decided to head back to Sea Oasis and have dinner. We had been warned by friends not to anchor at Matia overnight because the current can be very strong and cause your anchor to drag, which could result in Sea Oasis hitting the rocks on either side of the cove. We spent the night in nearby Echo Bay at Susha Island.